We're with John LeBoutillier, former legislator from the state of New York, congressman, and now national political commentator. And, John, everybody talking about the coronavirus. Obviously, that's the main topic, not only in our country, but around the world. But we have a couple of candidates who have been talking about it. And I got to tell you, I'm wondering, politics seems to be secondary right now in the midst of how people are reacting to this. It seems like we should be appealing to our better angels instead of our worst demons. Your thoughts on that this morning?
Yeah, well, I think the virus is overwhelming everything, including the campaigns. The campaigns are continuing in new ways, obviously. Mm-hmm. And as of right now, the primaries tomorrow in 4 states are going to go ahead. And after tomorrow's over, probably the race is basically over, and Joe Biden, who is going to be the nominee, will be the nominee. It feels that way, and it looks that way, and the polling shows it's that way.
I watched a little bit of the debate the other night on Sunday, and I got taken back a bit. I understand it's in vogue to criticize President Trump on everything. I got that. But there are times where I think we gather around our leaders, and I'm one who believes whether it's Nancy Pelosi or Donald Trump or our governor of our state, whoever it might be, and I don't care what party they're in, that we owe it to them to gather around. This is untrod territory, and I don't believe criticism should be made of the president on how he handles it. I think the president is doing about everything he can do right now, as is Speaker Pelosi and the Congress. And, it seems a bad time for me for politics to be practiced at all. If you want to say, here's what I would do if I were president and I were dealing with this, that's great. But you're not president and you're not having to deal with it right now. We're in the here and now. We're in the moment. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, that's been the tradition in America that in a crisis, you don't criticize the president.
Right.
And I can remember other crises, like after 9/11, you never heard a word against George W. Bush for a year, not a word.
No.
And the first 6 months of the Iranian hostage crisis, you never heard a word of criticism of Jimmy Carter over that thing.
Nor should
the country rallied.
Right.
Yeah. A virus is a little different. It's not really an enemy that we're at war with the way we were with the Ayatollah or Osama bin Laden. It's a little different. I do think Trump has opened himself up to criticisms, though. And I think if you're a candidate, you're running in the Democratic Party, they weren't awful. I watched that debate. They didn't spend most of their time trashing Trump.
No, they didn't.
It was a pretty restrained debate, I thought.
I just find politics right now to be obscene when it comes to the security of the country and what people are trying to do in that regard. That's all. I guess I'm very tender about that, whether it's Democrat or Republican saying that. I really, it's just obscene. But anyway.
Here's the thing, though. It's hard for a lot of people to rally to a president who 2 weeks ago said this thing was a hoax. And then on Friday, he's declaring a national emergency. The markets are crashing, the economy's imploding, and he's calling it a hoax. I mean, at some point, you're not leading when you say stuff like that.
Oh, I agree. I think what they're doing right now and what they've been doing for the last week or so has been, trying to get the ducks all in order and trying to catch. It's not like anybody has any practice dealing with this thing the whole way through. And
true.
We'd like to run out and all these people have all these platitudes and what I would do and so forth, but they're not in that hot seat of doing it. And listen. You and I both talked about this. President Trump is fully able to put himself into a hole with his words from time to time. I don't disagree with that at all. But I do believe that, he's trying to be presidential. There's a lot of people. I saw Dr. Fauci came out yesterday and said the fact that he cut off travel with China early may have saved a whole lot of pain for this country. So there are things that he has done that I think have helped us. And again, we're going to have mistakes being done by our leaders throughout this. I've accepted that because it's untrod territory. But, that's just one way of looking at it. But where do you see this thing going forward? Can we appeal to our better angels here in the long run, John? About 35 seconds left.
Yeah, I think we are. I think we will. I think the country's coming down a learning curve of what each individual person should do, which is social distancing as much as you can. Don't shake hands with anybody. Wash your hands constantly.
Yep.
And try to manage this thing for the next several weeks while we try to flatten the curve of new infections out. And each of us that's listening to your show, and you and me, we're citizens of this country.
That's right.
And we have to do our bit to beat this thing. And those three things, social distancing, don't shake hands, and wash your hands are the most important things each of us can do.
And be all those things are proactive and preventative, and do everything we can do to the very best of our ability, and keep hope, because hope is what you have when you're looking at the light when the darkness seems to be around you. And I think we're going to get through this, and we always do. And already I've seen there's some pretty good things happening with some of the vaccines we've had before that they're testing now. So, people are feverishly at work. I'm glad we're in this country dealing with it as opposed to some other places, and hopefully it's all going to turn out well. John, always good talking to you, my friend. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Great, Gary. Talk to you next week.
John LeBoutillier, and you can listen to WSBA Morning News with Gary Sutton 6 to 9 weekdays on News Talk 93.9 and 910 WSBA.